Hello and welcome, fellow Marvel fans, to the Snark Industries podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Remy.
And we invite you to join us as we work our way through every Marvel TV show, movie, and crossover, meaning if there's a Marvel character on screen, it's fair game. All categorized in the temporal order of their setting. By the time we're done, we'll have built a complete start-to-finish timeline of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. To accomplish this goal and to have a bit of fun along the way, each episode will be split into two parts, the Watch Party and the Deep Dive. If you're hearing this, you found one of our deep dives. This is where we slow things down and take a more pragmatic, in-depth look at a piece of Marvel media. We'll walk through the full plot, explore connections to the wider MCU and Marvel Comics, highlight Easter eggs, unpack lore, and of course, give you our own personal thoughts and feelings. Although this episode stands on its own, it is designed to complement the Watch Party. So, if you haven't watched along with us yet, we highly recommend starting there first and coming back here for the full breakdown. Most importantly, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this incredible journey. We're not affiliated with Marvel in any way, shape, or form. We're just fans who are passionate about these stories and these characters and wish to share them with everyone in a new and exciting way. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Snark Industries.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We just watched Eyes of Wakanda, Episode 1, Into the Lion's Den. John, why don't you go ahead and tell us what that was about?
Yeah, so we have an interesting first take, a series that kind of took me by surprise in a good way. This idea that we're going to get a deep dive into the history of Wakanda, stories that, as far as I know, haven't really been told before or are pretty obscure, bringing it to the light of the MCU in general. So we have episode 1 here, Into the Lion's Den, which happened in 1260 BC. And we have a redemption arc heroine by the name of Noni, who's coming to bring a sort of rogue operative known as the Lion, which is where the namesake of the episode comes from, back to Wakandan justice. This guy had went out and formed a kind of a nation of abducted men and women from across the world. You get lots of different cultures and things like that as part of it. We see Vikings. There was some looks like some Japanese influence in some of the armor pieces there that I noticed, which was really interesting. And so you have these people from all over the world who were taken, but as the episode kind of unfolds and we get some of the quintessential evil monologue from this lion, he speaks to it as if these are free peoples and he is giving them some sort of platform to stand above their lots in life, which I believe was maybe an attempt to try to have some sympathy for him or some understanding from what he is doing there and leading this group. But ultimately, Noni rejects this idea of joining him and joining these free peoples of this lion, Pride of the Lion, that this group is called. And he and her do battle aboard sort of the
epic fight
mothership of this fleet, this giant bastion of a ship. And eventually, weakened and nearly defeated, he sacrifices himself with a large vibranium-esque explosion, which ends his own life and sends her, luckily, through clever use of plot armor safely into the ocean below, and she's able to return to Wakanda and sort of take back her place as part of the honor guard, the Dora Milaje.
Though she does reject it, right?
Yeah, right. So, but you know, that's kind of what the arc was, and then we get to the end, and that's kind of the ultimate pin in it for her portion of the story. And we'll see as we kind of continue along. These are meant to be individual things. We're not, you know. Her story starts and ends with this episode, so we get to see it all of its completion.
Kind of bummed to hear that, actually.
Yeah.
I liked her as a character. She seemed interesting.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, and we get to see her story and everything else, and to see her do kind of this moral quandary with this rogue agent. And ultimately, the sort of sect that this guy came from, the Hatutsazari, is where she chooses to join at the end, which is what you kind of mentioned, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives a good piece into the cultural of Wakanda. Obviously, she says something that is obviously a trend, a theme, a motif throughout all of Wakandan history from the things that we have, which is keeping their technology apart from the rest of the world because rightfully so, I'd say the rest of the world kind of sucks and will do terrible things if they have it. Yeah. So that's kind of what we have here going on in terms of episode 1, Into the Lion's Den, getting a little bit of that history, a little bit of deeper lore into Wakanda, seeing some of the origin stories of well-known characters that we have today, like Okoye, sort of where that sect and order of the Dora Milaje comes from.
which leads us perfectly into the next segment we're going to talk about, which is how it fits into the MCU and what universe it takes place in. So obviously this takes place in the same universe as the films, which recently they've called 616. I kind of reject because that's nonsense, but it is the MCU proper universe.
Tell us how you really feel about that.
Call it 616 or 1999, but it is universe proper. So it's kind of neat to have had this world built with Wakanda as a familiar part of it. And then years later, after the Black Panther and Black Panther 2 come out, we get this really deep dive into the flavor of where Wakanda came from and where the Dora Milaje came from and where the War Dogs came from. And it was an interesting dive. I hadn't seen it previously, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting to have these stories, and as we continue on through our watch of the entirety of these shows and movies that we so love, there'll be a lot of things that sort of have obvious tie-ins and obvious riffs off of each other, and sometimes very blatant continuations. I think it's really interesting and unique to have a story where it kind of just stands alone. In fact, the only real thing, at least that I noticed looking through this episode, that ties this into anything other than obviously the Wakanda itself, the Dora Milaje itself, etc.
Of course, right.
Is the pickaxe that was there, which is the same one that Killmonger finds in the Black Panther movie, which we'll get to on another episode. But an interesting thing that this artifact was shown and a direct line into the actual MCU proper.
Yeah, which takes place nearly, 3,000 years later.
Yeah, right. So 1260 cool. BC. I mean, and the current things are happening more or less present day.
Yeah, pretty close.
We're talking, 3,000 plus years.
Yeah, wild.
of this vibranium pickaxe just making it through time and ultimately having a pretty vital role in the introduction of Killmonger in that film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting to see, like I said, a standalone story, but still giving it a little piece of that tie-in, a little homage to what I'll say the more common knowledged films and things such as Black Panther versus something like this. Really well done. And I think that'll kind of leads us into our final part of this deep dive is kind of our personal thoughts.
Yeah, with the exception of comic tie-ins, if we wanted to mention any of those.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Got ahead of myself, but by all means, let's go from the screen to the paper as well as a lot of our listeners here as us as well enjoys these things in all of its different forms. So I would be interested to know how it may tie into those things as well.
Yeah. So what I've looked up and what I've found was that the comic tie-ins here really are just the source of Dora Milaje, the War Dogs, things like that. Like the War Dogs being introduced in Black Panther Volume 3, Number 4 by Christopher Priest. I personally have not read that one, but I do know the War Dogs from other comics, and I would actually be kind of interested to dive back into that, see if I can find that on Marvel Unlimited and get that introduction.
Absolutely.
But as far as comic tie-ins go, that's pretty much all I found. So there's not a whole lot of history. Noni doesn't exist in the comics at all. She is a new character to the MCU and the comics in total.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, definitely even from a comic book standpoint, this standalone story.
Very standalone.
So I think that does lead us to a natural segue into some personal thoughts, which, I mean, for me, I would say that I really enjoy and I think I've touched a little bit on it during the recap and what we've been talking about, but I really enjoy having this unique standalone story because I know, at least for me, of someone who's loved these characters and these stories, whether it be in written form or visual form, television, movies. Has been a part of my life for 30 years or more at this point. Yeah. Careful showing my age here, but to have something that's not been rehashed, it's not been retold, that's not been reimagined, but to have a new character, a new story, historical, even though it's fiction, but historical tie-ins. And like I said, to me, the biggest thing that I really super loved about this episode was the different cultural tie-ins into this Pride of the Lion. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the Vikings, really interesting. I said, what appeared to be Japanese or Asian armor and weapons for some of these people who had kind of made up this conglomerate, this independent state that they did. I thought that was very interesting and very well done, and definitely speaks to sort of social social norms, social customs, things like that. It really just kind of brings us some light to a lot of different things. And ultimately, I mean, and for those that joined us for the watch party you mentioned there, but I think is worth re-saying, that has a lot to say about today as well, in terms of how things, look in 2026, even though this is a story that was set aside 3,000 years ago in a fictional land. Just to me, very well done. Definitely worth the watch for those that have access to it. A really great episode for a great show, as far as I'm concerned.
I haven't seen the full show yet, but I'm looking forward to watching the rest in this process. I completely agree with everything you said, and the social commentary on today's world being set 3,000 years ago is a wild thing, but comics have always been a commentary on our world. And I kind of love that about comics. That's one of the things that's always been always drawn me in. So to see that still shining today when something releases is always really, really great to see. They've always had a good stance.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I just love that about Marvel.
Totally agree. And along those lines, I remember this when I was a kid, and this has stuck with me to this very day. It triggers emotions within me when I think about the scene in the original Fox X-Men movie where Magneto's talking to Senator Kelly when he's captured. And he says, "There is no land of tolerance. There is no peace, not here or anywhere else."
Yeah.
Talking about when he came to America, obviously, his story being a Holocaust survivor and everything. I mean, dude, that thing reaches out and touches me right in my soul.
Legit just got chills.
I know. Every time I'm like, man, that is so true.
It's so good. It's so good.
It is so good.
And to expand on the episode a little bit, because of course I love the social commentary. I love the story. It was really, really well written. I really dig that it stands on its own. And to comment on the art and the way they chose to present this, the character design, the music, the color usage, everything was beautiful. It was really, really, really gorgeous. I think the one thing I regret about doing this show is the fact that I can't watch it on my big screen.
Yeah. Well, there's always time for that. You can follow up when we're not doing it.
For sure. You don't think I'm not going to listen to this while I'm watching that on my big screen?
Absolutely. Yeah. We got to smoke our own supply. That's part of it.
All right. Are there any last thoughts that you wanted to throw at the audience before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so, but I will say, outside of the realm of that, just because this is our first episode ever, for anyone that's out there listening, whether it be as it's released or sometime down the line and you're catching up, I just want to thank you all for being here.
Yes.
This is a very cool project that Remy, who's been a friend of mine for,
oh God, don't say it,
20 plus years at this point, and something that we just love doing and passionate about just in general. So just want to thank you so much for being a part of it, and I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, 100%. Y'all have a great night. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Snark Industries podcast. To join the conversation and further explore the Marvel Cinematic Universe with us, head on over to snarkindustriespod.com. The link will be in the show notes. But with that, we will see you in the next adventure.